Today is July 17th, 2013, about 11 o'clock a.m., and we're sitting with Mr. Richard Haslem.
Yeah, so thanks for coming in. First off, we really do appreciate it. If you don't mind, if we just start with where you're born and where you're from originally, and then we can go through Craig.
Okay. I was actually born in Roswell, New Mexico, when my dad was in the Air Force.
Okay.
Moved to Colorado, when I was about 2 years old, over on the Front Range. Spent probably kindergarten through 8th grade down in southwest Colorado at a little town called Norwood. Then my dad became state sheep and wool specialist for Colorado State University. We moved to Fort Collins for 3 years. He took a position in Steamboat Springs, so I actually graduated from high school in Steamboat Springs in 1972. Went off to college, all of that good stuff. Air Force, spent 8.5 years in the Air Force. We decided to get out of the Air Force so we could raise our kids in a small town. Actually picked up a job in Denver. For 3 years I was with the American Sheep Producers Council at that time, which was the organization that was responsible for advertising for the sheep and wool industry. From there I went to Seattle, and I was the Washington State Beef Commission executive, which we were responsible for advertising for the beef industry in Washington State. Then came back. We liked Seattle, but we wanted to raise our kids in a small town. The county extension agent job came open here in Craig. Since I graduated from Steamboat Springs, I applied for the county agricultural extension job, came back here in 1989, so that's how we ended up here in Craig.
Wow. That's very interesting.
So, been all over the world. So
Yeah.
We're military brats, too.
Oh, are you?
Yeah.
I ended up spending 8.5 on active and another 14 in the reserves, and retired out of the reserves as a light colonel, lieutenant colonel.
Lieutenant colonel in the Air Force. That's very impressive. All right. Wow.
But my wife never has forgiven me for getting out of the Air Force, because she really liked it.
Right.
But we were, as military brats, we were traveling all the time, so I did not think it was conducive for the environment that I wanted for my kids.
Yeah.
But
it's very nice of you. Speaking from experience. So what was Craig like when you came?
I would say it was about 8,500 people. It was still very, very ag-oriented, agriculture-oriented. Mines, power plants. The economy around here basically revolves around land-based industries, which is agriculture, mining, the power plants, oil and gas, and now hunting. Hunting is a phenomenally large economy for northwest Colorado. So, since we've been here, we've seen ups and downs, but for the most part, Craig has continued to grow a little every year since we arrived back here. I think there's been, when I was extension agent here, I was very involved with the ag community as well as economic type development, and we're slowly starting to diversify, but I think it's going to be a long time before Craig completely moves away from the land-based economies. I want to say, when I was extension agent, we did it was actually a research project for CSU about the economy of Moffat County, and at that time I want to say 6 or 7 entities paid all property taxes within Moffat County. So, like I said, we're very dependent on those type of industries. But, at that time, agriculture was a big part. That's what I was involved in, and that's how I mostly interacted with as a representative of the agriculture community. So.
Right. Had you been to Craig before you moved here?
Yes. We had a family ranch here at the western part. We bordered the Utah-Colorado border. Every year as a child, beginning from about age 5 or 6, I would say, I spent summers with my grandparents. The home place was in Jensen, Utah, but the cow camp was in Colorado, so like I said, our ranch bordered both, or operated in both Utah and Colorado, and so I spent summers, you know, and I remember trips to Craig, you know, with my grandfather to pay the taxes and stuff like that.
Right,
So,
right.
You know, the old Cosgriff was still in place then, which was a big, you know, social center at that time, and Craig was an institution. But no, it's Craig, and Craig was significantly smaller then. That was before the boom. I mean, I want to say when I was growing up, Craig was probably, I mean, I would just have to guess 3,500, 4,000 people. So it was a very small town.
Right.
And I'm sure somebody has a record what the population was back then, but it was a very small town. So, and it's, at that time, in my opinion, at least strictly agriculture for the most part. 'Cause there wasn't the power plant and all of that. This was pre-boom. So.
Right. So, aside from, you know, the population and, you know, obviously when you come in the power plant, what was the biggest change you noticed coming back when you moved to Craig in '89?
First of all, the size of Craig.
The size of Craig.
The size of Craig. Plus, all of a sudden, south of town, you saw this big, you know, building, which is the power plant and the mines associated with it. That was the single biggest change that we noticed.
Right.
What were the people like when you were growing up, and then also when you came into town?
Well, I've always said that Craig has been blessed with the most wonderful people in the world, and it doesn't matter whether it was then or now. I mean, Craig just has wonderful, wonderful people in Northwest Colorado. There's kind of a sense of helping each other, and that's a reflection of, you know, being a small community.
Right.
It was very important to my wife and me to raise our kids in a small town because of that feeling. Probably when I was growing up, Craig was a little more agriculture oriented because that was the industry.
Right.
But you know, just because the mines moved in the power plant, I mean, there's good people everywhere. So
for sure,
most definitely. So.
What was your experience like raising a family here?
Oh, wonderful. I mean, the advantage we had, and one of the reasons why we wanted to raise our kids in a small community, is that in a small community, your kids have more opportunity, believe it or not, to try different things. They can belong to band, they can belong to 4-H, they can belong to boys and girls, you know, they can belong to DECA, they can do sports, they can do that. If you live in a big city and your kids want to do sports, that's the only thing you do, you know, in my opinion. So it gave us the opportunity for the kids to experience different things, to try to find their own path, and we always felt like our kids were safe. You know, I mean, when they got, other than the normal worrying about what your kids do when they get their driver's license, you know, we always felt that our kids were safe.
Okay.
Which was from a parenting standpoint, a very, very important aspect.
Right.
Now, that doesn't mean that we didn't pay attention to what they were doing, but I mean, it's just like, you know, we weren't worried about them being in the wrong place at the wrong time, you know, gang shootings and all of that. That's just, so.
Right.
That's probably the biggest benefit.
What type of family recreation would you guys do?
Well, our family, we like to, very outdoorsy. We like to picnic a lot. We did a lot of picnicking.
Oh, okay.
The kids had 4-H projects when they were of age, so, you know, we worked with the livestock, the sheep and the horses. But by and large, our recreation was picnics and seeing Moffat County. That's what we did. So.
Okay.
Other than, you know, when the kids wouldn't swim, you know, then we went to swim meets. When they were in athletics, then we went to, you know, but during the summer it was primarily picnics and just being outdoors.
And like you said, there's a lot for them to be involved in anyway.
Oh, absolutely.
There's a lot for them to do.
Absolutely.
Okay.
I think.
Right.
You know.
No, I mean, it sounds like it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Small communities, I think, anywhere offer kids more opportunity.
Yeah.
Just to experience different things.
No, I see.
So.
What was school like for them?
Well, as far as I know, great. I mean, both my kids did well in school. It was kind of a drawing point for us because we felt that the school system was a very good school system here. I'm a little bit biased because my teacher's a public school teacher. She teaches 4th grade. But we felt our kids were put in position that they could compete with anybody, anywhere, at any time. So both of my kids walked out of here with scholarships to colleges. So I think my kids were, like I said, were very, very much prepared by the school system. So.
Okay. Good school system. All right. How did you see in your line of work? What kind of changes did you see in Craig over the years, or in your work specifically?
When I came here, there was very much, and I got very involved with resource management. But at that time, there was kind of the feeling from the ag community, the war on the West, is that was when Clinton was in office, and there was a big movement, environmental movement, to try to shut down public lands grazing with the cattle and the sheep, and those were very important economies here. So I got very involved with, at that time, what was called coordinated resource management, which was trying to coordinate a compromise between all the different entities that use the public lands. Probably our biggest project was down in the Axle Basin, where we tried to coordinate and get everybody happy, help facilitate the different uses of the public lands. So we try to combine, what was fair and reasonable for the permittees for cattle and sheep, as well as the hunters and fishermen. People who just wanted to, just lock up the public land so that nobody could use it. So it was a balancing act, and it was really trying to coordinate all the different entities into coming to a consensus about the best use of the public lands. So
right.
That was, and then over time, we've moved. I don't know that those conflicts have gone away. I was also very involved at that time with trying to keep the prairie dog from being listed as an endangered species, because that would really shut down the uses of a lot of Moffat County land. I was on that task force, and we were able to get, by working with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, as well as all of the different entities, the environmental groups and all that, agreeing that at least in Moffat County that the prairie dog would be as an experimental species, so that it wouldn't have that endangered species, with the intent that if we could demonstrate that the local people could manage, the habitat for the prairie dog, and that the prairie dog could continue to thrive and whatever, then we were doing a good job, and we didn't need the federal designations. Because once you get that federal designation of an endangered species, then land use changes tremendously for everybody.
Right.
Everybody, it changes. So that was pretty important.
Yeah. Wow.
At one time we had considered, there's also the introduction of the black-footed ferret, which was an endangered species. I think the last one was found up in Matisse, Wyoming, on a working ranch. By capturing all those U.S. Fish and Wildlife Services, been able to, at least keep that species from going extinct. At the time that I was working on that, we were also considering introducing the black-footed ferret back into Moffat County as a natural predator for the prairie dog, because the black-footed ferret, that's the only thing they eat is prairie dogs. So.
Was that successful?
Yeah, I think so. I'm not sure that we specifically have, because that program was still going on when I left Extension, and I can't give you an honest answer whether or not we have black-footed ferrets in Moffat County at this point, but I know that there was an effort to try to get them reintroduced. So, I went into private business in 1995, so that's when I left Extension.
What was that business?
Insurance.
Insurance.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I opened up my own agency and sold insurance.
Oh, okay. What was it like owning your own business in Craig?
Challenging. I think that the hardest I ever worked was when I owned my own business, because every morning you get up, you look yourself in the eye and say, it's either going to work because of me or it's going to fail because of me. I mean, there's no choice.
Right.
And I was very successful. I built up and I concentrated mostly on benefits, retirement planning, things of that nature. So I was able to, basically from scratch develop a business in a small community of 9,500, people. Did it honestly and ethically, and sold my agency here, or merged my agency with another agency here in town of April last year, and July 1 this year, 2013, I've retired from in business altogether. So.
Okay. Well, overall, then, a fairly positive experience.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah. Craig has been our home
Right.
for the last 20 years, or ever since we came here from 1989. I mean, we made a life here. We raised our kids here. I don't know that we're going to continue to stay here, at least during the winters. At some point when my wife retires, we're wanting to go to some place that's at least warmer in the winter.
Yeah, definitely.
But the Yampa Valley is, I can't think of a better place to live 8 months out of the year. I mean, if we want to be in the forest, we're, 30 to 40 minutes away. If we want to be in the desert, we're 30 to 40 minutes away. I mean, there's fishing, there's hunting. That's what I do for recreation, so I can't really think of a better place to live.
Right.
8 months out of the year.
Right.
If you like snow and cold, then it's 12 months out of the year. But I've gotten to the age that, that I just prefer something warmer.
With all of your background in land management and whatnot, how can you speak a little bit about the changes in hunting that you've seen in Craig?
I've seen a tremendous growth in hunting.
Hunting.
I want to say that, and this is just impression, where hunting really developed in northwest Colorado when the ag community started going through real hard times in the mid-'80s.
Okay.
These ranchers needed to figure out a way to provide income. I mean, the steer and the lamb market kind of took a dive in the '80s, and in order to keep the ranch going, they had to basically diversify. Well, hunting just started, turning into that, and over time, it has evolved, in my opinion, that almost all private ground in Moffat County is now leased out one way or the other for hunting. When we first came here, it was a lot easier to hunt on private ground because you just call up the rancher and say, hey, can I go out and hunt? And I mean, certain ranchers will still do that because you develop relationships with people, but it's now evolved to the point, you can go hunting after my paid hunters, get done with their trip.
Right.
I mean, in my opinion, most of the private land in Moffat County has turned into where the land is leased for hunting purposes, and that whole purpose is to provide income into the ranch.
How lucrative has that been?
I think for most guys, pretty lucrative, depending on where you're at. There's, trespass fees anywhere from $800-900 per gun up to $10,000 to $15,000 per gun. So
$10,000 to $15,000.
Yeah, depending on where you're at. Some prices I've heard. So.
Do people pay that?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Wow. I'm gonna write that down real quick. Sorry.
I don't know what the really current rate is, and people are not going to share with you their actual income, which that's a private matter. But I mean, you start hearing what it's costing to go hunt certain areas, and it's like I said, anywhere from $700,000 to $15,000 per gun. So.
Oh my gosh.
And that depends whether it's just a straight trespass where they let you into the gate, and you're on your own, versus the $10,000 to $15,000 per gun hunts are more fully guided hunts where they provide tents, food, as well as hunting, guiding for the hunt.
Would it be the guide that provides that, or do the ranchers themselves, do they provide? Okay.
Yeah, most of the ranchers. There are some ranchers that do their own guiding.
So that's
well, actually, it's quite a few ranchers that do their own guiding, but there's a significant number of ranchers that just will work out a lease with a guide and outfitter, and basically charge the guide and outfitter a certain fee for the use of their property, and then after that, it's the guide and outfitter's responsibility to determine whether he's going to book hunters and make a profit or whatever. So,
Okay.
no, it's hunting has turned into I like to say, the fourth economy of Craig, Colorado, and it's a cash economy. A lot of hunters come into town, and you just see them peel off $100 bills. I mean, and with a cash economy, obviously, not everybody's going to declare. I wouldn't declare everything. Maybe I would get in trouble for that, but I mean, it's a pretty good deal for Craig. It
Right.
really is.
Right.
Hunting now brings in a lot of money.
Right.
To Craig.
When is the hunting season?
Well, it typically starts, I want to say, in mid-August with, archery and muzzleloader, and then probably the big gun seasons are October, November, December. I think the last elk hunt, I'd have to look, ends in December of every year. But
is there a
most
large
of the
influx?
Yes, very much so, a large influx. There are businesses here in town that, for all practical purposes, make their entire income with 3 or 4 months out of the year. So,
Okay.
I would say the majority of the motels, and I don't know, you'll have to ask the motel owners, but I think significant, well, maybe that's not a true statement with the recent oil and gas, but for a long time, the hotel, motel, restaurants were very, very dependent on the hunting.
Right, during that part of the year.
Yeah, very dependent. So you create your year's income in 3 or 4 months.
Interesting.
So
And are all these hunters, where are they coming from?
all over the United States.
All over.
Yeah.
Internationally?
Yeah, I'm sure there's some international hunters, but by and large, just by looking at the license plates that you see in town, you see a lot of Texas, you see a lot of Wisconsin, you see a lot of California that come into town, and that's just by going to the grocery store and looking at the license plates that are in the Safeway parking lot.
Right, right.
But no, all over the
Good indication.
United States. So.
Wow. Now, what happens, is there fierce competition for local hunters in these free areas, the
Sure,
government
sure.
lands for hunting?
Sure,
What
sure.
is that like?
Well, I mean, if you live here, you sit there and say, well, we live here, we pay the taxes, we should have first rights to hunt. But that's way above my pay grade to figure out how licenses are handed out there. I mean, the way the division of what I guess is called state parks or whatever, but I refer to them as division of wildlife. Most of the hunts here you have to draw for, you have to apply and draw for the hunts, and how they decide what are going to be, Colorado residents versus out of state. That's in the mix for the DOW. I don't know how they figure that out. So.
Right.
But it's just like this year. My dad and I drew cow elk licenses, but the guys that we hunt with come from California and Texas, they didn't draw. So it's a lottery. I mean, you put your name in and you're
It's the luck of the draw.
luck of the draw. You build up what's called a preference points, and the more preference points you get, the more likely you to draw. But there's some areas here, like up in Area 10 up in northwest Colorado, it takes 7 to 8 years to draw into those areas for elk.
Wow.
So people just keep applying, but there's phenomenal trophy animals up there. Just mind-boggling trophy animals.
But not the same regulations for fishing.
Fishing is, there's no problem with fishing. Just go buy a fishing license.
Right, okay.
You can fish.
Right.
So,
Very fascinating. And where would you say Craig is now? How do you feel about the community now?
well, I think Craig is always struggling to how to diversify the economy, because since we're so dependent on land-based resources and businesses, it's like the current administration feeling here locally has declared a war on coal. Well, coal is a phenomenal, that's one of the main, the coal-fired power plants and all of that is obviously what's very important to this economy. Well, to sit there and say that all power plants eventually need to be replaced by solar or gas, in my opinion, is wrong, because there is what's called clean coal technology now. But attitudes toward our industries change with change of administration in Washington. I mean, the previous administration, the Bush administration, was significantly more friendly towards economies like Craig here in the West, whereas the current Obama administration is not so friendly towards these industries. But that's just the nature of the game.
Right, right.
But I see Craig, ever since we've been here, there's always been an effort to somehow, some way figure out a way to diversify our economy, just because we're so dependent on the land-based businesses. So.
Right. Oh, that's really interesting. Well, thank you.
It's all opinion, so sounds great. Anything else I can help you with?
No, that was really good.
Okay.
That was really informational.
Sounds good.
Thank you.
You bet. Thank you. Appreciate meeting.